Guys, how we doing today?
Doing great.
All right.
Doing well. Just watched a 20-minute version of Marshall and Virginia Tech on YouTube, and I'm all set.
We can compare notes on that because I watched the first half and then I really didn't watch much of the second half, but I saw some things there as well that were kind of cool. So yeah, we can, as we get into this, if we want to talk Marshall just a little bit, we can do that.
The
Not too
Thundering
much.
Herd. Interesting football history they have there for a lot of different reasons. They may want to make a movie out of that. All right, folks.
Yeah,
Here we
Marshall.
go. Yes.
My buddy's a West Virginia fan, and this is like Ohio State clowning Cincinnati when he gets all hopped up about Marshall. And they played West Virginia one time, and they came up short at like the 2-yard line on like the last play. They had to get a touchdown to beat West Virginia. And I'm with him in his basement, and he stands up, starts screaming, "Who are you now? Who are you now?" I'm like, God, this is Marshall. Why do you care? They're not even in your league. I mean, what? Why? You play them like four. You have like a 3 and for a while the legislature was going to make them play them, and then they agreed. Well, yeah, you could play 3 games at West Virginia and 1 at Marshall, and I'm like, dude, it's like Ohio State, Cincinnati. It's like they're not even. Ohio State and Bowling Green. It's like it's not even in your league. What? Why do you care? And he's like standing up, screaming in his basement, "Who are you now? Who are you now?" Like they just beat Pittsburgh or Texas or Oklahoma, for God's sake.
Steve, I'm guessing that was either the 2010 game that was a 24-21 finish or the 1911 game, which was 17-15. Those are the only 2 games that have been one-score games in the history. 12-0 all-time record.
Might have been
West
2010.
Virginia.
I don't know, but maybe they missed the field goal. I don't know, but it was like the last play of the game they lose, and he's just giving them hell with both barrels. I'm like, dude, it's Marshall. It's like your AAA affiliate. Hey, come on, man.
I mean, we can't be saying that. 20 years ago, we all know where we were watching Mike Nugent drill a 55-yarder.
Things got a little hinky
for that great 2004 team. Yes, good times. The Heisman candidate, Mike Nugent, at that point.
That's right.
Yes, as Tony points out, and he's always quicker in the trigger than I am to get to these sites, but 12 consecutive wins for West Virginia, 12-0 series lead, all played in prehistoric times until a 1997 game, and that was a Randy Moss, Chad Pennington team, because I remember they played Ole Miss in the Motor City Bowl, I believe the first ever. And then you've got the run from 2006 through 12, where they played every year in West Virginia again. Swept Marshall. I thought Marshall might have snuck in a win here, but they did not. So,
yep, 9-0 all time according to Joey Foster here.
12-0.
Yeah. Those Pennington and Moss teams were pretty fun to watch because they would even show them on like ESPN2 or ESPNU here and there.
Yeah,
Randy Moss.
Yeah. And of course the Byron Leftwich. I mean, that where they're carrying him down the field. That was crazy. How can a guy who you have to pick up and carry down the field remain in the game to play? But that was nuts.
I think it was that team. It was a Leftwich team that played the highest scoring bowl game of all time, at least at that point, like 64-61 in the GMAC Bowl down in Mobile, Alabama. All right. Good stuff. We veer off. All right. We might as well stay with Marshall since we're there. And the observations that you guys came up with from this football program that went 9-4 last year, and of course authored a Notre Dame victory a couple of years ago in South Bend.
Beat Virginia Tech last year, but lost to them this year. My God, I'm looking at the line. Ohio State's favored 39.5 points. Oh my word! Yeesh. Tony, go ahead with your observations, and then I will. I'll throw in a nugget or two.
Well, I think the thing that struck me most in watching that is it was a 17-14 game late into the third quarter, and in Virginia Tech was winning, and they also had a punt return touchdown to give them their 17 points. So I think this is a Marshall team that is going to attack, and they'll try to throw it around. Virginia Tech is not a good offense and not a great defense, so I don't know how much stock to put in it, but I think this will be the best team Ohio State has faced. But I don't foresee any issues from anything that I saw. They'll, Marshall will blitz, but there are also going to be big lanes to run through and to capitalize on that as long as they pick up the blitzes as well as they've done. So I think Ohio State will have a pretty solid day of it offensively. And Marshall's pretty wishy-washy in terms of completing passes. They might throw a ton, but they're not going to complete a ton.
Yeah. What I find interesting is, I always, revert back to my training, which is the Phil Steele book, to answer all questions. It's very interesting that the guy that they selected to start against Virginia Tech at quarterback, a character by the name of Stone Earl, who is a 6 foot, 211-pound senior from Keller, Texas. Let's just see. He was previously at North Texas, and prior to that at ACU, which I think is Abilene Christian, it looks to me. Didn't play a whole lot at North Texas and comes to Marshall. And as I said, I pull out my Phil Steele and I'm like, Stone Earl, what does he have to say about Stone Earl? The words Stone and Earl are not findable on any of these two pages referencing Marshall. Stone, Earl, I'd have to look at the North Texas page probably on the statistics from last year to find out, anything about Stone Earl. So, this is one of those cases where with the transfer portal and everything else, you're like, I'm sure they're going back and looking at North Texas tape, to see what Stone Earl can do as a quarterback. He didn't do a whole heck of a lot against Virginia Tech. And yet they do have a running back who's got a pair of 100-yard games so far, A.J. Turner, albeit in the first two games against Stony Brook, who they beat, I think, 45-3, and then Virginia Tech, who they lost to 31-14. I don't think their offense is very good. Let's just cut right to the chase. I just don't see a whole lot there. They're not going to be able to establish the run like they have against Ohio State, and I don't see this character named Stone Earl accomplishing a whole lot throwing the football against Ohio State. I think Stone Earl is going to get planted a couple times in the turf there at Ohio Stadium. But what I do like about Marshall was their defense, and they got some studs, even some guys that could be draftable commodities. Number 15, Michael Green already has 3.5 sacks, I think, in 2 games. A defensive end, 6'4", 238, a speed rusher. And again, Ohio State in the past has taken speed rushers like this and just kind of swallowed them up with their size. I mean, imagine him, trying to get around Josh Simmons. He's better pack a lunch type thing. So I think they've got some guys in the front 7 who can play. Takazi Legs or Tyquay, I don't know how you pronounce this. Tyquay's Legs, I don't know, at defensive tackle. He's pretty good. And Landon Watson at linebacker. Those 3 guys, I think, are all players that could play for a lot of Power 4 schools. I don't know that they would come in and play right away at Ohio State. But, I look at the stats. I look at, what they've done. And I did watch the first 2.5 quarters of that game against Virginia Tech until it put me about to sleep. And, Virginia Tech, there's a reason why they're not out of the gate real strong. So, they're not all that great either. So, I'm interested to see. It's a step up in class, certainly from Akron and Western Michigan, and we'll point them a little bit closer toward Big Ten play and at Michigan State next week. Obviously, Michigan State has a tough road game this week at Boston College. If Michigan State negotiates that, then you'd say, well, Michigan State's quasi-legitimate, because they would have road wins at Maryland and Boston College, who are, again, middle of the road, 6, 7, 8 win teams typically. So that would be a sign that Jonathan Smith is kind of getting things going there at Michigan State, and a caution for next week. But first things first, and we will see how the Buckeyes fare on Saturday at home against Marshall.
I do think it's telling that Marshall's facing about 50 rushes per game. So it's the offenses have been able to keep the ball moving against them. And Stone Earl will run the ball. He's a mobile guy, and he's part of their running package. So that's something Ohio State's defense will have to focus in on. And the one receiver there, I think it was Fitzpatrick or Fitzgerald, had a ridiculous Christian Fitzpatrick had a ridiculous one-handed grab against Virginia Tech. So he's got some skill, but overall, I think Steve said 39 and a half points was the line or something like that. That's a lot of points, but Ohio State's defense right now is outscoring their opponents. So we'll see if that continues.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking something in the lines of 48-14, which would be, or 48-13, I think was what I was kind of thinking. And that's only 35 points, but, that's still a solid win. I know fans want them to always win and cover the spread and not give up any touchdowns. This is a stat that I quasi know, and I put it in our first look column. Ohio State has started the season with 2 games where they have not given up an offensive touchdown. And they have not, to my knowledge, had a series of games where they have not given up a defensive touchdown in 3 straight games since the 1973 season. It was 3 Big Ten games in a row where they gave up, did not give up an offensive touchdown. So again, take that with a grain of salt. My bleary eyes kind of, going through all those lines of scores. You say, oh, there's a 13. That one can't be it, after 2 zeros. And you're like, well, I better check that for a defensive touchdown. And, then you're like, oh, drats, it's not that one. So, I checked as much of it as I could, but I think it's back to 1973, which is 51 years since they've had 3 games in a row where they haven't given up a defensive touchdown. And it could happen this week because I don't know how good, or an offensive touchdown. I don't know how good Marshall's offense is. And again, this is a byproduct of how terrible, absolutely terrible, the first 2 teams Ohio State's played this year.
The Ohio State defense, the only team in the nation not to allow an opponent into the red zone so far this year.
There you go.
So I would expect that to end, but that's just indicative of, as Ryan Day has said, the standard is the standard regardless of the opponent. So they're doing what they're supposed to be doing against bad teams, and we'll see if that continues.
Then it's off to Michigan State, correct? That's on
Yes.
the road?
Yep.
At Michigan
Off to East
State.
Lansing, who's surprising some
On
people.
Peacock.
Oh, one of those. Okay.
And that's got everybody all up in arms. As soon as it came out, see, they give us a little 20-minute notice when these announcements are coming. So I was armed and ready. And so we put the story about it up on our site that it's on Peacock. And I go, you can miss me with I am not getting Peacock, messages that I will not pay. I'm paying for this and I'm paying for that. I can't operate the television. I can't get to an app, all of that, up in arms that everybody's had about the streaming games. And I'm like, this is like, the burn notice message where he's got the thief's money out on the bridge with the flamethrower and he's about ready to flamethrow the guy's money. And the guy says, I'm going to track you down. I am going to stab you because I know you're going to stab me. You're going to shoot me. You're going to kill me. We know you don't want the games on streaming. Too bad the games are on streaming, and the money that you're getting, your school is getting for putting these games on streaming. That's how they're able to buy Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Caleb Downs, Will Howard to come back and play for your team. So just figure your subscription to Peacock is a donation to keep the best players in Scarlet and Gray.
But then you also have Tennessee adding a 10% surcharge to tickets from now on to
Have
also
you no shame?
help pay for that talent. So you can either look, Buckeye fans, you can either give your money to Peacock or Tennessee. Those are your
Pay
only
me
two options.
now or pay me later. You're going to pay me. So that's just
But,
the way
like,
it is. You're addicted to the sport, and it's just, consider yourself like a Premier League fan where you're on a different streaming or satellite service every week, and good luck finding it. And yes, it's a $10 charge. So there you go.
Well, I mean, for people like my mother who does not have the internet, doesn't want doesn't want the expensive Wi-Fi. Like, that's not just a $5 charge to be able to watch the game. And I'm sure she's not alone in that. But this is also not the first year that this has been done. This is something you either have to accept or buy into, literally and figuratively. And if it's just one game, at least it's always going to be, I would say a lesser game, but it's a Big Ten road game against an opponent who is undefeated right now. So,
Yeah.
you
The bar, this is the second year for this. The bars have it now.
Mhm.
So, they know they have to pay for it. So